market to pursue those ideas instead of spending tax dollars that can be diverted to other things that we need right now. At a time in which our government has so much to deal with, it is time we realize that the market must be entrusted with some of the burden. We should focus on restoring our economy and improving job markets. In the meantime, advances in the technology which have been given to more concrete answers as to which direction to go in our quest for clean energy. If the free market isn't interested in alternative energy, then we know it would have bankrupted us anyway. If we go after something now that is unproven, it could be wasted money. $30 billion a year just wasted on something that doesn't actually work. And then we will be in a financial position to really make a difference. If we fix our economic problems now, after a few years goes by and we have advances in the scientific community, now with no huge debt, we can go after these problems in a more coherent fashion.
So stay at the podium so you can answer their questions. Would you guys like to ask questions?
So, did you guys have questions? I'll ask one too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, like, what do you think is a real, clear national strategy to actually lead the global clean tech industry? Like, how is the United States going to seize that opportunity?
Well, that's the whole point. The United States government isn't in the business of creating business. The free market is in the market of creating business. If this is something that is really lucrative and out there for other countries to compete in, then the free market will automatically latch onto it as something that can be exploited.
So I have a question to sort of tack onto that. And my question is kind of a little bit of a comment, and then you can sort of answer what you think about that. So you said that the U.S. government is not in the business of creating business, but if you look at the internet, if you look at companies like Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, billions of dollars, millions of people employed, it took 22 years of government investment before the internet was privatized in 1987, after the government had been working on it since 1965, and then these companies exploded in the 90s. So what would you say about this counterexample to your claim that the government is not in the business of investing to create businesses that are lucrative to the economy?
Are you saying that the creation of the internet was a business idea of the government?
The creation of the internet came after 22 years of government investment in the nation's top scientists, the universities around the country.
Absolutely, that was a military investment at the time.
Right.
Military investments are completely different. That's the reason that we have $80 billion a year invested in the military. Military investments at atomic energy, completely military investments. If we're going to complain about military investments being so high, $80 billion a year, we have to realize that the vast majority of scientific gains that the government has created is through the military investing. I'm not against military investing.
I just want to, I'm sorry, I just think there's a contradiction here, because you're absolutely, I mean, the government has played an absolutely critical role. In fact, in most of the major industries that are today, and also microchips, the internet, aerospace, biotechnology, etc. It's hard to find an example where they aren't. So I think, this presents a really, important challenge to your market ideology. But I think, and I think if we abide by that, we're going to end up losing this industry. And I think if we look at the history of government investment.
You guys need to either create these as questions, or we're going to let the audience, because they've got a couple questions. Okay, so
what Teryn and Ishan are talking about is market failure from spillovers that happen when a private firm invests in technology, because sometimes there's learning that other private firms can do. And there's another market failure that has to do with climate change, which is that the price isn't right, which was addressed by a question earlier. Should we make oil or coal more expensive? And as someone who believes that climate change is real, and as someone who believes that climate change is created by humans, do you support this effort to make the price right?
You guys want to take that?
I don't believe that climate change is caused by humans.
I know you don't, but Dylan, you do.
I have trouble with the idea of artificially just screwing with people's lives, really. I mean, people have a right to go after, people have a right to look for a livelihood. And if that livelihood causes some, earlier in the forum, we were talking about how developing countries are struggling with the idea of all these kinds of caps, because they want to get ahead too. I don't think that it's fair to say to some people, well, your business is damaging to the economy, so you can't do that. I think that the rights of people who are alive now is the rights that we should be protecting. What comes in the future, I hope that the free market comes up with some great ideas and stuff, and I think that that's the direction that we want to go. I mean,
Could I ask one more thing?
Is it a follow-up to your question?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
I mean,
And then we're going to move on to Eli's.
I understand your fears about like over-regulating the economy,
yeah.
but to use sort of a silly example, if there were a video game, the production of which cost someone somewhere else in some other country the loss of their finger, wouldn't it be fair to pay that person back, at least when you bought that video game, to pay that person back for their loss?
We're not. Are we indirectly? Is the creation of the video game indirectly causing them to lose the finger? I mean, then no. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, it's not like we're purposely going after people around the world and like taking stuff from them and destroying. It's a byproduct of our industry that's destroying. It's not something that we owe them because it's a byproduct. It's accidental. If we were purposely going around the world and with intent destroying people's countries, then yeah, we would have to owe them something.
Okay, thank you so much. Why don't we get Eli up here?
I guess first I'd just like to thank Dylan. I thought that was, I appreciate that he's willing to be candid, come forward and say what he thinks. I think a lot of the time the debate on these issues tends to diverge. Sort of some interesting paths. I was fully prepared to come up here and say, climate change is real, like we don't need to argue about this is crazy, like, but, I think I'm gonna go ahead and not do that. That's not that interesting. I wanted to first seize on a point that you talked about, which is sort of this question of why do we need to act now? You said, well, this is a question of acting in 2010, but I think that with this in mind, it's important that we conceptualize climate policy as a sort of insurance policy. And I think the fact is, if there was a question of 1 in 100 chance of a terrorist attack that killed, say, 1,000 people, I think the fact is we'd be willing to spend quite a bit of money right now to deal with that, as with a number of other things. So I think that sort of this idea of saying, well, like we don't need to do anything because there's uncertainty, so we shouldn't do anything. I think, in fact, uncertainty is exactly the reason why we do need to act now. I think that a question of making sure that we're able to take this uncertainty and address it now is actually a compelling argument to act now. And I think that you're right. There's a lot of argument in climate science. But I think the fact that the argument is about things about why long-wave radiation at the top of the atmosphere doesn't square with this or this. The question is not, are we emitting carbon dioxide? Is the Earth warming? Are humans responsible for at least a significant portion of that? That's not the mainstream argument anymore. So I think that the fact is, the science is there and that we need to act now to minimize the risk, not sort of wait it out to see, when we're going to know that there's a 100% chance that this is going to happen. I don't think that'd be a compelling argument outside the sphere of environmental issues, and I don't think it's a compelling argument in that sphere. Sort of moving on to the more economic argument, just as a point of clarification, I think that obviously we're dealing with an important issue here right now because we're in a recession, but we also have a massive government deficit. So you sort of have these two things. Some side says, well, like we need to deal with the deficit. We can't have inflation, so we need to cut government spending. And then the other side of the argument says, well, we're in a recession. We need to boost that government output. We need to start spending a lot. So I think that that's a legitimate point of contention. I don't think that it's exactly straightforward that because we have a deficit, we need to cut spending now. I think that there's a strong argument to say that we need to boost spending now and then worry about the deficit after we're outside of the recession. So I think I'd like to talk about climate policy right now in terms of why it's not this free market policy. I mean, I think a lot of times people come up here and they say, this is crazy, like we're going to have government intervention, we're taking over, we're destroying America, cap and trade, wow, like communists, and it's just like, whoa, because as far as I've been able to tell from some cursory research and some other things, cap and trade is actually about as close as you can come to a free market policy for addressing environmental issues. I mean, the idea of regulating, pricing in an externality is not, it's not controversial, it's not crazy, it's exactly what you do. So I think you're absolutely right. We do need to have a free market. If the government was proposing, hey, tomorrow we're going to build 75 million windmills over every single portion of the United States, that would be crazy. That would be a terrible way to address climate change. That would not be the free market. That would be horrible. And I completely agree that the free market is one of the most important powers that we have both in the United States, but the fact is that the free market is broken. The free market simply does not price in the external cost of the effects of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere. And as we've spoken about before, that's not a particularly controversial point. There is an externality here, and common sense Econ 1A textbook would tell you that that externality should be